If the International Phonetic Alphabet has symbols and sounds you haven't mastered yet, it's time for IPA and IPAs with Molly.
Yes.
Okay, so
We haven't even talked about IPA. Is that where you're headed now?
yeah, inquiring minds want to know. And this, mostly when I say inquiring minds, I mean me. What is your favorite diacritic?
Okay, so you mentioned this, and what just occurred to me is I think it has to be for me the little x.
Ooh,
Because
mid-centralization?
Yeah, just because for me
Nice.
it's a really great diacritic to like have access to in your vocabulary. That
Mhm.
if you take an ash and you just put the little x above it, that you're schwaifying it, that you're moving it toward the schwa. It's so wonderfully descriptive when it's like, well, it's kind of that sound, but it's not quite that sound, you
Yeah,
know? And so that's my default. That's
nice.
where I'm going.
That's a good
Maybe
answer.
well, is it? I was like, is that just too lame of an answer?
No, it's not too lame of an answer. It is a very useful, when you said like I have an answer and it's like a very useful one to have. I was like, I bet it's mid-centralization.
Oh,
But
God,
it
so
is.
predictable. So
No.
what is yours? What is your favorite diacritic?
I like the devoicing diacritic, the little
Oh,
circle,
yeah.
because I had never noticed it was a thing until you started pointing it out, until you gave me a name for it. Um, which
And
I
that's
think
what I
is
love about IPA,
right.
is it gives names to things. And in the end, I don't care if you remember the symbol. I care that you remember the concept.
Yeah. And you were talking about,
Cool.
we were transcribing our own names. And
Yeah.
so like I did Molly and you were like, great, but I did Wetzel and you circled it. And you were like, I'm just curious, say your last name for me. And I said, Wetzel. And you were like, you partially devoiced the Z. You don't say the Z all the way. And then you gave me a name for it. And I was like, I do. I like sat there after that class and was like, Wetzel, Wetzel. Like just played with it for a while. And I was like, I do. I tend toward like a mixture of an S and a Z.
Yeah, so you don't feel like you go all the way to an S.
No, I don't feel like I say Wetzel. Wetzel.
Wetzel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're in that land in between. Okay, so then how do you deal with the idea of, are you actually saying a voiced S or are you saying a devoiced Z?
I say I'm saying a devoiced Z because I think, and I say this because I feel like I start with the Z and then I start to devoice it. Wetzel. Wetzel.
Oh, and I think you do the opposite.
And you see, when I just said
Because
that, I think I do the opposite. I was like, oh shit.
Big son of a bitch. That's
He's
cool.
always
This is
your
how
teacher.
I learn things all the time when it's like, okay, let's talk about the reality and how is this happening?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I had never thought of that before. I learn stuff every single year by digging into it and going, oh wow. I've posted a bunch of videos about IPA and stuff like that on my YouTube channel. And then I've had people ask me a question on that and I go, oh, let me figure that out and give them an answer back. And I've learned a lot I've also had just a lot of obnoxious things, but that is life. I've had a lot of obnoxious things from you. So having those questions, it really prompts me to go, oh my God, I never thought about that.
Yeah. It's been super eye-opening. I learned broad transcription first. And
that was all of what undergrad was broad.
It was all broad transcription. I mean, we used syllable breaks. And so we did talk about primary and secondary stress and we used that kind of stuff, but it was all broad transcription.
Yeah.
And so there were moments where like in the unstressed syllable, I was like, well, that vowel doesn't really fit, but it's closest to that, I suppose. And so the world of diacritics, when I took your class, sort of blew my mind because I was like, oh, now I have the language to say what I've been hearing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And it was all this but it feels like it's in between those sounds.
Yeah.
And I never knew how to describe that. And like, there's a teacher teaching 16 of us, and I don't think I had the vocabulary to say like it's between those two for me.
Yeah, right.
And she, I think, just encouraged us like go with what's closest.
Yeah.
But when you're teaching 19-year-olds, you just
Yeah.
so
Well, I will say that I kind of agree with that as the starting point is go with what's closest. Okay, now, is there a diacritic that helps to clarify this?
Yeah.
Do you raise it? Do you lower it? Do you move it forward or move it back? Or is it just moving towards the center, mid-centralized? So that so I like that. When I first learned IPA, I learned broad transcription, and being a Midwesterner, my speech was good as well, goodish.
Yeah.
And I forgot the IPA as soon as possible because it felt really pointless to me. It didn't feel like a genuinely useful tool.
So I guess my question is, and like, I don't think this, but what would you say to somebody who doesn't think it's a useful tool? Because I think it's a very useful
I think
tool.
they've never learned how to use it properly.
That's
you know what?
funny.
A hammer is a lame, awful tool if you're trying to screw in a screw.
That's true.
And if all that you have is this little tiny toolkit, it's really hard to do much complicated work. And so what the diacritics do is they start to add all these little attachments. Suddenly you've got a few tools and you've got attachments that allow you to adapt to doing almost any kind of speech construction work. I've never really played out this metaphor this far before. But I think it's actually not a bad metaphor.
No, I think it's a pretty good metaphor.
Yeah. And it's really true for me that I just didn't find it useful. So it was like, why would I hold on to this?
I didn't remember all of it from undergrad to grad school. I took about a 5-year break. But we had to start learning it again over the summer, and you were sending us videos. And so it came back really fast. And I had my notes still from undergrad. So I would look through and be like, oh, Melissa, who was my teacher in undergrad, Melissa explained that one like this, and he just explained it like this. And it helped like cement my understanding of like, I used to know this. He just explained it like this. That's neat. And so that was super helpful. But I mean, I got nerdy about IPA in college or in grad school, and haven't looked back yet.
And now you started like drinking in honor of it. What's going on with that?
Yeah, well, I will tell you what's going on with that. So my thought combining IPA and IPAs was that I saw a bunch of my classmates getting really stressed out about IPA and getting really like, I just can't. And it was like, it's not that stressful. Grab a beer.
So I'll teach you really just need to drink. You need to drink is what you're saying to them.
Yeah, like let's do it in the kitchen together. Pour yourself something. It can be water. I don't care. Like,
and did you actually do that? Did you guys do a hangout session where you were showing them a few things?
No, but I did send, I don't know if you know this, I did send every single one of my classmates over winter break first year letters in IPA. Like I wrote them letters in the International Phonetic Alphabet.
Did you really?
And made them figure it out.
You are such a dork. I love it.
I'm such an asshole. They hated it. Actually, I think a couple people wrote back in IPA or like texted me and they're like, that was sweet. I think Philip told me to go fuck myself. But yeah, no, I'm a huge dork. I love it. Yeah.
You may be a bigger dork about it than I, because I really don't enjoy transcribing extended passages. Do you enjoy that?
Yeah.
Cheers to you.
Cheers.
Mustard glass to you.
So what do you have coming up? What are you working on right now?
Well, I'm working on the IPA and Genericin thing. I'm coming up on another session of this thing called the Accents class. And so if people are interested, they could sign up for the mailing list where they get info on it, but it's at theactingclass.com, the Accents class. And I do it with this guy, Dan O'Day, and what it is like 4 weeks of 2 sessions a week of teaching 7 different accents. Like the first night is introduction and some IPA stuff and placement and intonation concepts. Like, again, it's not about people learning the IPA, but it's like, we need to talk through Hell's Corner.
Mm-hmm.
Because Hell's Corner concept is so important to every accent we're going to come up on.
Yeah.
And then we do 7 weeks where they get videos and audio and books and stuff for learning this accent. And then they work on that accent, and then they come into class on Thursday night, and Thursday night we're working on the first accent, and then the next accent's the following Monday, and then Thursday. And then, so it is, and I think people, it can be overwhelming, but they have access to all the videos and all the materials forever. And then when it's done, when we're done with those 4 weeks, they get every single one of the accent help downloads.
Like
so
the
they've
whole
got the whole
library?
set, which is 50 of them now. So yeah, they get the whole library as a part of it. So it's and they've gotten used to my teaching enough, and hopefully I've put enough tools in their toolbox to continue in that metaphor, like with the different intonations, that they can go, oh, now I get that, Northern Irish is like this and Caribbean's like that. And when you get to the more like working class Mexican and just today, when you're doing something that's Austrian, that you start to go, oh, wait, that's a really similar intonation for all of those. When you can start to make those connections. One of the things I've been reinforcing over and over again, more recently, I think, is I want to be clear with you. We're not learning this accent. We're learning the elements of the accent because they also relate to all these other things. I'm just trying to remind people of that.
Yeah.
It's more.
That's so cool. That's really cool.
So I enjoy that. I enjoy working with that group of people, and it's mostly audiobook people. But there are others who are actors. There's been a couple of people who are more like interested, interested and very curious.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's a deep dive.
That is a deep, for just curiosity.
Yeah.
Well, audiobook, I mean, accents and audiobook narrators is hard.
Yeah, being able to bounce between accents, move into it quickly and move out of it quickly.
Yep, move into it quickly, move out of it quickly. And like I know for a script, obviously you work on everything. And so like when I'm doing a show in dialect, I go through all my lines and I go, oh, that's on the ask list, or, oh, that's a sound change I'll probably miss. But when you're reading a book, you don't have time. You're not getting paid well enough to do that.
No, or you are reducing your hourly wage because you get paid per finished hour.
Yep.
Your hourly wage just crashes. Yeah, depending on how long you're spending on it.
Yeah, that's my clients that are audiobook narrators. We talk about what are the important things to remember for sight reading in this accent.
Yeah.
How do you know? We talk about quick drop-ins to, you want to pause your recording and say your drop-in sentence to get into the next character so you can start and go again. Talk about the importance of placement and intonation and not that I love mistakes, but mistakes are going to happen and you can.
Yeah.
I recorded a book in RP and I work in RP a lot. And I listened to a section of it and was like, ooh, I missed that linking R. But at the end of the day, people who buy that book aren't going to be like, she missed that linking R.
Let's break this down. I mean, and if one of the things that you're doing, if you're doing accents for audiobooks, is you really are covering a variety of things. So, you not only have to do RP, but you have to be an American, and you might have to be an Australian and a German, and you might have to be from Kenya. And and so it is interesting in audiobook land, because of the nature of it, there's not, one of the things that there's been a real big awakening about in the last year, and before that too, but especially in the last year, is, wait a minute, I'm now moving into the land of somebody else. I do not need to be taking a job from somebody of another race who tends to be denied
work. Yeah,
denied work. But then the challenge is with audiobooks, it's like, well, it's actually kind of everything.
Yeah.
You do have to be all things to all people.
Yeah. For me, it depends on the book. I don't tend to audition for books if like it's mostly from the protagonist's point of view and the protagonist is an African man. It's like, yeah, that's not,
Yeah.
I'm not going to sound like that. But
You
if
shouldn't be
there's
the person doing that book.
no, but if there is, an American woman who has a scene with an African man, I'm gonna have to figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a slope that you have to figure out where you're okay with it. But I
Yeah.
figure like if I am similar to the majority, or at least can tell the majority in a way that is authentic and true,
Yeah.
then like the side characters, yeah, that's what accents are for.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah, I did a gig where I was recording lines for this project, for like a museum project.
mhm.
And they were going to be filming it all. They were going to be filming it all, but it was actually, trying to not say too much about it, but it was an American-based museum. And they were filming the whole thing in New Zealand, partially because New Zealand was open during
Mhm.
COVID when the rest of the world was being far stupider. And so then they were having all of these people from New Zealand needing to be like a Texan or from Kentucky, and some of it was African American. And I'm like, look, the last thing you need is this white guy the white guy from Iowa being your African American example voice on these sentences, because yeah, you want it to be far more authentic than that. This is where I got to step back, and so I actually brought somebody in to record some of those lines
Yeah.
for that, because it was just like, yeah, there, you have to know your limits. And I do that with people all the time where they're requesting something. I go, well, you're now reaching the limit of,
Yeah.
I can help you to get to this big of a target, but it sounds like you're trying to get this big of a target. I'm not your person.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is an interesting, like knowing where your jobs are and where your jobs aren't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's been that's been an interesting thing for me as a newer dialect coach of like, how do I approach things that I'm like, wow, this really isn't something that I do natively. How do I find resources for this actor? And I think that's an important is if you aren't the person, can you find a resource that can help them?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, thank you, Jim.
Thank you. This was fun.
You can never fail with the fresh pale ale and Molly.
I had my background noise. Henry likes to hang out. Come here.
Yeah, my train's here.
Your train is here, and that's why I thought I got to bring Henry in, because he was over here. He was over here just trying to distract me while you were talking. He was rolling over and over again.
Hi, Henry.
That's Henry.
Oh my gosh.
He got a haircut recently, so he actually looks like a dog who might live in a house with people. Yep.